It's almost!
He's done it again! Unbelievable!
Oh, straight into the roof of the net.
Nice one.
Straight down the middle. So a good performance from both teams here today.
I am Rupha Ramani and you're watching Firstpost. Now there's a lot lined up for you today on the show. Sports and politics always go hand in hand. Now we may not like it that way because if you are a true sports fan, any sports fan, then when sports and politics come face to face, sports will always be the casualty. Our show today is centered around the different political leanings in sport. What happens when the politics of a locker room spills out onto the football field? Nothing positive can come out of that, as seen with Manchester United getting knocked out of the Champions League, and that too at home. And then there is the politics of the gender. FIFA's report says women footballers receive 29% more hate than their male counterparts, more abuse than their male counterparts. And then there is the geopolitical issues affecting sporting ties. Israel football team is now without their biggest sponsor, and that comes coincidentally with the war being waged on Gaza. So a lot of politicking on this sports show today. Do stick around. But first, a look at the headlines in Sports 360. We'll start with cricket. South Africa beat India by 5 wickets in yesterday's T20 match. India batted first and scored 180 runs in their innings after rainfall stopped play. Rinku Singh scored his maiden international half-century in a T20 game. Using the Duckworth-Lewis method, South Africa were given a revised target of 152 runs in 15 overs. The Proteas sealed the win in the 13th over with a 49-run knock from Reza Hendricks. South Africa now leads the 3-match T20 series 1-0 after the first match was washed away. West Indies beat England by 4 wickets in a T20 thriller last evening. England batted first and were bowled out for 171 runs in the 19th over. Batters Shea Hope and Kyle Mayers scored quick 30s to help the West Indies chase down the total in the 18th over itself. Andre Russell was named player of the match for taking 3 wickets and scoring 29 runs for the West Indies. Australian batter Usman Khawaja was pictured in the nets wearing a shoe with a message for peace in Gaza. Khawaja was planning on wearing the same shoes for the opening test match against Pakistan starting tomorrow. Now, Australian captain Pat Cummins has confirmed that Khawaja will not be wearing the shoes on match day. Cummins added that Australia supported Khawaja for his message of peace. However, it would go against the rules set by the International Cricket Council or the ICC. In hockey, India beat the Netherlands coming from behind 4-3 in the Men's Junior World Cup quarter-final. The Netherlands got the ball rolling early and took a 2-0 lead at half-time. Then the Indian Colts built pressure on the Dutch and scored 2 quick goals to equalize the score at 2-2. The Dutch side came back with another goal, but India piled on 2 more to seal the win. They play Germany in the semi-final tomorrow. In weightlifting, India's Mirabai Chanu will skip the Asian Championships in February next year. She's still recovering from a hip injury which she sustained in October at the Asian Games in China. Chanu, who lifts in the 49 kg weight class, says she will participate in the World Cup in April in 2024. And Paris 2024 Olympics organizers say that at least 60% of all food will be vegetarian. Athletes and spectators will be served meat-free burgers, salads and vegan products. Organizers say that 80% of all dishes will be made from produce sourced in France. Organizers added that they are catering to serve over 13 million vegetarian dishes at the Olympics. Now, football is peaking in Europe. The UEFA Champions League is in its glorious phase. The top teams are battling it out. Who will be crowned the best in Europe? Spanish giants Barcelona are through to the knockout stages. They are followed by rivals Real Madrid. Winners of last season's Premier League, Manchester City, are also through. But what about their rivals, Manchester United? The famous Red Devils, the most popular football club in the world. Their journey has not just been rocky and shaky, but disappointing. Ever since the era of Alex Ferguson and then later on Cristiano Ronaldo ended, the Red Devils have not found their winning rhythm. Things were looking up when Erik took over as coach last year. He led his team to a thumping victory over Chelsea, which helped United qualify for the Champions League in the first place. But that's all the joy that they have seen. Which brings us to today. Manchester United have been knocked out of the Champions League. They were handed a 1-0 defeat by German giants Bayern Munich. But it was the where and the manner that they were defeated in that sticks out. Man United are a force to reckon with, especially when they play at home, the iconic Old Trafford. During the 27 years under Alex Ferguson, Manchester United lost only 34 times when playing at home. And things have only been downhill ever since, because in the last 10 years itself, the Red Devils have lost 35 matches at home. Under Erik Ten Hag, United have had 4 losses at Old Trafford, and the season is not done yet. That's also what Ten Hag believes, despite getting knocked out of the Champions League. Here's what he had to say after that home turf loss to Bayern.
There's still many things to play for. And now we can focus, of course, on the Premier League. And yeah, this is, I think, say the level we want to play, Champions League. So yeah, we have to give every effort in and to be in the top 4. So we next year we are back in the Champions League, and then of course we have the FA Cup. So there's still many things to play for.
Listening to that, it seems like the mood in Old Trafford is onwards and upwards. And put this loss aside, not a bad outlook to have if you're a sporting team, because this can become a habit. You lose and you move on. No course correction, no reworking of strategies, and no changes. That is a recipe for disaster. So what is the biggest challenge that United need to overcome? First of all, it's the injuries. In the first half of the match against Bayern, United lost Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw to injuries. Strikers Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial had to miss the game because they are both battling illnesses. Other star players like Mason Mount, Casemiro and Christian Eriksen are suffering from injuries too. You won't believe it, but 11 players are on the sidelines due to injuries. The Red Devils are basically playing with their second and third string of players. Now, it's unfortunate for the team and the coach. They agree to.
So why did this happen? And this is, I would say, it's a symbol today, and we have to make subs, and we're losing players, and we're losing also players who are very decisive for our game, who can make the difference. And I think that was in many games also the case in this campaign, that we not always had the players available who wanted to play, and that's definitely a part.
Now, the Champions League is over for Manchester United. They will now have to focus on the Premier League. They will have to finish top 4 in England to qualify for the Champions League next year. That looks like quite the mountain to climb at this point. But the first thing on Ten Hag's agenda will be to bring his team together. The home defeat would have left the players dejected. The reports of rift between manager and players can't be all false, especially when players from other clubs whisper the goings-on in the Manchester United locker rooms. This is the right moment for true leaders to shine, to put aside differences and rise above it to create something special. Is Erik Ten Hag the man to do just that and prepare a comeback? Can he script history books just like his very illustrious predecessor Alex Ferguson did? Or will the Champions League loss open more wounds along the road ahead? Now, there was a report released by FIFA, that's football's governing body, that stated that 1 in 5 women footballers playing the Women's World Cup this year faced abuse on social media. That's a very stark statistic. It's a disturbing number. What this number says is that women footballers are 29% more likely to face abuse online than their male counterparts who participated in the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not a feminist rant. So hold on and just hear me out. I will just show you some facts, incidents, true events that only reiterate this finding. We're talking of the Women's World Cup. Now, what comes to your mind when I say that? Well, ideally, it should be Spain lifting the World Cup for the very first time. But you will picture this that's on your screens. Spain's now former football chief, Luis Rubiales, forcing a kiss on one of the Spanish players after the win, Jenny Hermoso. A kiss that was non-consensual and definitely not welcome. Now, that tells you the story. And Rubiales continues to be in the headlines even as he's fighting the court. Seems like he tried to do the same with an English footballer that very night. That piece of news came out just a few days ago, but let's shift focus from this sport to another and talk about something more recent. Take badminton and Japan's Nozomi Okuhara's experience. Now, just a bit about Nozomi. She's been world number 1 is a world champion and an Olympic medalist. In India, she would be an elite athlete. She's gone on social media to talk about her experience to get to her room and what that entailed. From the airport in Delhi, where she landed, to Cuttack, and then to her hotel. Now, let me tell you, it was not pretty. The only bright spark, she says, is her Indian friends in PV Sindhu and HS Pranoy helping her out. Imagine that Nozomi who had won the Super 300 in Lucknow and returned to India a week later to take part in the Odisha Super 100. She's on trying to get as many points as she can in her race to qualify for the Paris Olympics. Now, Okuhara says her troubles started at Delhi. Now, I had bad memories at Indian airports, she says, in the past. When I got out of the airport, a stranger started putting my luggage onto the cart without permission. I got scared and stopped, but he said something along the lines of, "I'll take it to the entrance." Feeling uneasy, I continued to the entrance. Now, all this while, what has happened is that her Uber driver that she had booked failed to arrive. She was not able to reach the Badminton Association. Multiple calls were getting no responses. She had to take a taxi to the hotel where she was going to stay a night before heading to Cuttack the next day. The cabbie she finally was forced to take because her Uber was incommunicado charged her a bomb because she compared that to the Uber fares. She ended up paying 10 times more than what she ideally would have. Now, I know what many of you are thinking. This is familiar, being fleeced by cabbies, but this was a horrific experience for the Japanese shuttler. And her ordeal did not end there. She faced the same struggles in Cuttack. She had arranged for transportation, but there was no one to come to pick her up at the airport. Upon reaching the hotel, she waited for 4 hours. That's right, 4 hours to get a room because there was apparently none available. She obviously contacted the association, and one of the officials who came out from the hotel, the Indian Association, to address her concerns, asked her for a selfie instead. Meanwhile, PV Sindhu was trying to get her accommodation elsewhere. The Japanese Badminton Federation then linked up with the Indian Association, and only then she managed to check in. She did say that the hotel staff were kind and helpful, but it was nothing short of a trying, harrowing experience. Now, all of this is so familiar to a lot of us. So these instances just reiterate how it isn't easy being women athletes the world over. There is some amount of resistance and struggles that one always has to face, whether it is in trying to check into a hotel from the airport, or worse, facing abuse from utter strangers.
You only have to see scores of women across the internet or in the business, whether you're a presenter, you're a coach, you're a player, to realise that we're routinely used to dealing with systemic misogyny, bullying, and behaviour that has been pretty normal for a large part of the football public. But I feel that sport is probably the last place in society where that male privilege exists, and that if you haven't experienced systemic misogyny like lots of us have, you can't for one moment understand how detrimental some of these conversations are, knowing that anything anyone says just enables an absolute pile-on, particularly on social media, which, let me be clear, it doesn't take a lot for people to pile on women.
Now, this is not a very surprising summation and makes me ask, does sports, and by that extension the fraternity, make it more difficult for women in sports? Is a level playing field a little too much to ask? Like when the women's WTA event organized in Mexico was done so shabbily that the world #1 had to question the organizers on the lack of infrastructure and safety for top women tennis players in the world. Now, I ask this especially when we come across comments like the one Joey Barton made. Now, for those who don't know, Joey Barton is a former footballer, a controversial one who has been part of clubs like Manchester City, Newcastle United, went on to be a manager for Bristol Rovers. Not a very impressive resume that, yet he went on to say this on his social media platform. He says, and I quote, "I'm bothered about the female footballers who aren't good enough players to comment on the male players because they don't understand the game. Women shouldn't be talking with any kind of authority in the men's game. Come on, let's be serious. It's a completely different game. The women's game is thriving. Fantastic to see. I cannot take a thing they say serious in the men's arena." Now, why so much hate, Barton? Now, we started the story with the FIFA report, and we shall end with it too. While submitting the report, the FIFA scanned over 5 million posts and comments and verified over 7,000 instances of abuse or threatening behavior. As far as who were making these threatening comments, 67% of abusive accounts were traced back to North and Central America, while 21% was coming from Europe. And that's a lot of hatred for something that doesn't seem to have a strong purpose. And what will it take to even the scales? Now, Kobe Bryant, when accepting his Oscar for the short animation film Dear Basketball, had used the words someone had thrown at him: shut up and dribble. Well, all women athletes really want to do is shut up and play. That's all. That shouldn't be difficult. Now, sports or politics, sports and politics, or sports versus politics. No matter what the permutation, sports is the only casualty when pitted alongside or against politics. The Israeli war in Gaza has created a divide in the world, and sports is not immune to it. The most recent controversy involves Israel's football team. Popular German brand Puma has terminated its sponsorship deal of the Israeli football team. The contract will expire next year, and a renewal is not on the table. Puma says the decision was made before the war in Gaza. Israel is calling it a campaign to mislead the public. This is not the first time that politics has played spoilsport, and it looks like it won't be the last.
The war between Israel and Hamas shows no signs of stopping. The death toll is rising daily. Gaza has been torn down by Israel's firepower, and hundreds of Israeli civilians are still being held hostage. Protests against the war are increasing in number and frequency, and people have started to take sides. You're either a supporter of Israel or Palestine. And this sentiment has entered the world of sports. The first setback from the war was football. Euro 2024 matches that were scheduled to be played in Israel were halted. They were rescheduled to a neutral country. Now, German brand Puma has ended its partnership with the Israeli football team. Puma was the official kit sponsor for the men's team. The contract was set to expire in 2024, and Puma has decided against renewing the contract. Puma says the decision was taken before the war began.
These decisions were taken in 2022, in line with the regular timeliness for the design and development of the team jerseys.
Puma says that they are not taking any sides in the Israel-Gaza war. They said that along with Israel, the contract with Serbia will also not be renewed. Pro-Palestine groups say that their campaigns calling for the boycott of Israel influenced Puma. Israel has called it an attempt to mislead public opinion, despite Puma saying the decision was taken before the war. Public sentiment has played a role in their decision to not renew the contract. This is because calls to boycott Puma grew since the war began. Palestine supporters called Puma a supporter of genocide, and this would have affected their strategy and the brand. No company wants to be caught between sports and politics. Puma's decision to opt out of renewing the contract with Israel is a way of staying away from any further controversy or bad publicity. Israel isn't the only country which lost a sponsor. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Russian athletes and players also lost their sponsorship. Nike ended its contracts with all Russian athletes and made a full exit. There aren't even stores of Nike in Russia anymore. Adidas also cut down its operations in Russia. The German brand has also permanently halted business activities in Russia. At the end of the day, firms and companies have to look out for their interests. It's good business strategy to follow public sentiment instead of going against it. Adidas and Nike did it in Russia, and now Puma is doing it in Israel.
A lot of football on this show, and we end the show with it as well. In Last Serve today, we bid farewell to the Italian footballer Giorgio Chiellini. The 39-year-old defender has retired from international football. Chiellini captained Italy to clinch the 2020 Euro Cup. He played 117 matches for his country, and Chiellini spent most of his club years at Juventus helping them win Serie A title 9 times.
La prima rete porta la firma di Chiellini, ragazzo cresciuto nel vivaio, da poco convocato nell'Under 21.
Era 3-0 per l'Italia, la prima rete con la maglia azzurra.
Chiellini al secondo
10 minuti di sonno accasciato sulla scrivania, pronto a ricominciare per salvarne un altro, per il coraggio di stare insieme, di andare sui balconi a risultare come faremo adesso. Siamo campioni d'Europa!
Well, that's all the time we have here on this edition of Firstpost. We hope you enjoyed this as much as we did bringing it to you. I'll see you again tomorrow at 7 p.m. Until then, bye-bye. Take care.